You ever watch someone fix the unfixable? Not just a thing, but a person, a family, a whole sense of what's possible? That's what happened in my town, right on the edge of nowhere, in a garage so run down you'd think twice about leaving your car out front. That's where Riley Morgan worked his so-called magic, though if you asked him, he'd just grunt and say he was keeping things running. But I swear, if you were there, you'd know better. Because the story I'm about to tell you isn't about a miracle worker. It's about a regular guy, the kind who never made the news, who did something no one else could, all because he just wouldn't quit when everyone else did. You know what I mean? Now, Riley wasn't what you'd call a people person. He liked machines. Engines made sense. They broke. You fixed them. End of story. No drama. His hands were always stained black, his clothes a patchwork of oil and sweat, and his idea of breakfast was coffee from a cracked mug that had probably seen more goodbyes than reunions. Still, every kid in the neighborhood knew his shop was the place to bring broken bikes or rusted skateboards. He'd help. Never asked for much, just like knowing something useless got a second shot. Riley lived simple, never expected a windfall. And the only thing that really bothered him was the silence that crept in when the tools stopped buzzing point one day. Though, that silence got torn open by the creak of the front door and the kind of footsteps you don't usually hear in a place that smells like burnt oil. In walked Evelyn Grayson, dressed sharper than anyone had a right to be in this zip code, with a little girl at her side whose legs were encased in these heavy, clunky braces that looked more like punishment than help. Evelyn didn't waste words. "I heard you fix things," she said, but there was this crack in her voice, like she was just barely holding on. I'd heard of the Graysons, old money, big charity names, not the type to end up in Riley's part of town. That's when I realized something had gone seriously wrong in her world. Riley listened. He was always good at that, letting other people talk first. Evelyn explained that her daughter, Leah, had been through everything medicine could offer. Surgeries, therapies, braces from the best specialists. Nothing worked. Leia's legs were still trapped, the braces cutting into her skin. The doctors had told Evelyn to accept it, to give up. But you know how it is. Hope doesn't care what the experts say. And somehow, in her darkest moment, someone told her about Riley, the mechanic who fixed things nobody else could. He took the braces home that night, spread them across his workbench like they were just another busted carburetor. I watched him. He barely slept, just kept studying the braces, pulling apart where the metal seized up, replacing heavy parts with scraps he'd saved from God knows where. I've never seen anyone work that stubbornly, not for money, just for the chance to prove the world wrong. When Evelyn and Leah came back, he slipped the new braces on her legs, lighter, with springs pulled from old car seats, soft straps made from an ancient roll of leather. Not a miracle, but a beginning. "Do you trust me?" he asked Leah, kneeling down so they were eye to eye. She nodded, scared but brave, and Riley lifted her up, just for a second, maybe two. For the first time, Leah stood without her mother's arms holding her tight. She wobbled, but she stood, and that shop, usually full of engine noise, went quiet except for the sound of Evelyn crying and Leia's tiny gasp. Riley didn't want payment, told Evelyn to bring her back, that he'd keep tweaking the braces until they were right. Money? He said hope was more valuable. Yeah, that happened. From there, everything changed. Leah came back again and again, each visit another small victory. Riley turned his cluttered shop into a training ground. Old rug for soft landings, new hinges and springs every week. Evelyn was there too, every time, watching her daughter grow stronger, more confident. Even the town got involved. Folks dropped off old bikes and wheelchairs. The diner brought Riley food. A retired teacher stopped by to read stories to Leah. Riley's shop became the heart of something bigger, a place where broken wasn't the end, just the start. Now, let me back up a sec. Because there was a twist to all this, and I'm not sure even Riley saw it coming. As Leah started walking, first one step, then three, then across the length of that garage, the story started spreading. People who never noticed Riley before were suddenly talking about him at church, in the grocery store, Even the local news showed up one day. It wasn't about fame, though. Riley kept his focus on the work, learning online, calling in old friends, searching for better materials. The real goal was always the same: help Leah and anyone else who came through that door. But Evelyn, she had plans. She started calling lawyers, filing patents, putting together teams of doctors and engineers. She didn't care about turning a profit. She cared about giving other families what Riley had given hers, a reason to believe. And she wanted Riley in charge, even if he joked he didn't know the first thing about boardroom business. She told him the only thing that mattered was that stubborn streak of his, the belief that you could always fix what everyone else had written off. The day Leah walked, really walked, no help, no hands holding her steady, was the day Riley finally allowed himself a smile that lasted longer than a minute. Evelyn hugged him so tight, he thought his ribs would crack. Leah just laughed, the sound bouncing off the concrete and metal, and in that moment, Riley's old garage felt like the richest place on earth. That's not where it ended, though. Not even close. Pretty soon, a black SUV showed up, this time with men in suits, boxes full of paperwork, the whole deal. Evelyn had done it. She secured patents, lined up investors, brought in the people who could take Riley's rough sketches and make them medical grade. She asked Riley to lead the charge, and after a lot of back and forth, he said yes, not for the money, but for every kid who might take their first steps thanks to a mechanic who believed in second chances. A few months later, the shop got a new sign: Morgan Mobility. Kids and families came from all over, some with hope, some without. Riley greeted each one with the same quiet promise: let's see what we can fix. Leah, meanwhile, was running down the aisle like she'd always belonged on her feet, and Evelyn, she kept her eyes on her daughter, smiling every time. Riley never became rich in the way people think of it. His bank account didn't look much different, but every letter from a grateful family, every laugh from a child who took their first real step, that was more than any paycheck could ever give him. Late at night, he'd sit alone by his workbench, grease still under his nails, and thank the universe for stubborn hope and the chance to fix what everyone else had given up on. So now, I've got to ask, was it luck, skill, or just a refusal to quit that made the difference here? Maybe all of the above. Maybe the real miracle is what happens when someone decides not to listen to impossible. So what do you think, folks? Is hope worth fighting for, even when the odds are stacked against you? I want to hear your thoughts below. Let's talk about justice, second chances, and whether one stubborn soul can change a whole town.